2 years after Starfield's release, its last unique feature has finally been outdone. No Man's Sky's new Voyagers update adds ship interiors, the one thing Starfield still had over it. Prior to this, No Man's Sky kinda beat Starfield at everything when it came to a space exploration game. Starfield had 1,000 planets, No Man's Sky had infinite. Starfield had loading screens, No Man's Sky didn't. Starfield could only generate large grids, No Man's Sky could generate entire planets. When No Man's Sky first released in 2016, it was highly criticized for being too shallow, boring, and not really meeting expectations. After years of continuous free updates, the game just reached 110,000 concurrent players, marking the highest player count since the game's release. Returning players found not just a game indistinguishable from the first one released, but an exceptional game overall. No Man's Sky somehow went from over-promising to over-delivering. Which brings us to Starfield. Ever since its release, it has divided fans and received a lot of criticism. Prior to this game, Bethesda had always leaned on a particular formula, so much so that it was coined the Bethesda formula. Handcrafted open worlds full of dungeons, side quests and activities to find. It worked every time, with the studio winning Game of the Year multiple times. Bethesda knew what games they should make, and they excelled in making them. Starfield broke that pattern. Instead of handcrafted maps and dungeons, the studio implemented procedural generated worlds. Rather than competing with other handcrafted RPGs, they followed No Man's Sky formula, and unfortunately, this didn't work. With lesser technology, they were unable to match the quality of that game. But that wasn't the only issue. By focusing so hard on this new procedural setup, they moved away from their own formula, and as a result, RPG aspects were stripped down, quests were generic, exploration felt pointless, and the very formula that they were known for was nowhere to be seen. Bethesda ended up with a game that tried to be both an RPG and a space sim, and nailed neither. Now, Starfield had some redeeming qualities, with shipbuilding being one of the standouts. That was one thing that Starfield had over its competitor, one thing that could sway some fans. And now, after the new Voyagers update, not only has No Man's Sky matched it, but they've improved it even further and implemented it into a world that has more space exploration. So, what's left for Starfield? What should they do next? And is this the final nail in the coffin? Well, in this video, I will attempt to answer that question. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So first of all, let's discuss why Starfield didn't quite satisfy Bethesda fans. Bethesda's design shift was the first big issue. In past games like Skyrim and Fallout 4, the worlds were handcrafted, with unique dungeons, events and side quests scattered everywhere. Exploration always felt rewarding, and if you saw unexplored terrain, you knew something new was waiting. It was all worth your time. This formula had worked since Morrowind and only improved with each game. With Starfield, Bethesda abandoned that setup. Instead of one handcrafted map, players got 1,000 procedurally generated planets. Every time you arrived at a planet, the game would create a grid, which would randomly place landmarks from a bank of pre-built options. Plants, minerals, dungeons, everything was random. As a result, planets felt barren and empty, with landmarks spread far apart and little of interest along the way. In past Bethesda games, it wasn't so much about the destination, where you were going. It was the journey on the way that was the highlight. On the way to quests, the player would pass by forgotten ruins, caves that begged to be explored, and random NPC events that demanded attention. It made the player want to walk everywhere because there was so much to see. But in Starfield, the trek was just empty space. Even the destinations felt generic, with only about 20 pre-built dungeons recycled across 1,000 planets, leading to constant repetition. This ruined the experience, as not only was the journey now dull, but the destination might not be worth it. Players were no longer guaranteed unique experiences for exploring, so many quickly stopped after a handful of planets. So straight away, you've just removed a core aspect of what made a Bethesda title successful, a world worth exploring. But it goes deeper, as this core design breaks everything else. Without a static world to build quest stories within, the rest of the formula begins to crumble. Bethesda games were also known for their huge selection of side quests, but this got messy. Say you meet a man in Skyrim who wants you to save his wife from a tower. Well, the world has this. There is a specific tower there with a unique layout, a special boss fight, and his wife is at the top of the tower, waiting for you to help her. So Bethesda would build this tower, place it on the map, and then design a story around it, a one-off experience in a certain location. In Starfield, as the world is constantly changing with no consistency, you end up getting side quests that feel generic. Fetch quests. Collect a bounty from a man in a space station on a moon. Kill an enemy located in a similar space station on a similar moon. Or find an item in a clone of that first space station on yet another similar moon. Most of the quests in the game were Radiant quests, which are procedurally generated quests from the computer. They never run out, but amount to simple static objectives with no story. Most of Starfield's best side quests take place in one of the few handmade towns, as those areas were crafted like the old Bethesda model. But outside of those areas, which is 99% of the game, quests boil down to boring repetitive fetch quests. So straight away, all the key elements that people loved about previous Bethesda titles have all been removed. Now, it doesn't help that the writing was poor to boot. Bethesda's lead writer, Emil Pagliarulo, has faced criticism for years, but in earlier titles, weak stories were carried by the strength of existing lore. Elder Scrolls had Michael Kirkbride's deep mythology. Fallout had the work of Tim Kaine. With Starfield, Emil had to create a universe from scratch, and the result felt unimaginative. Instead of alien civilizations, strange mysteries, or unique cultures, for example Mass Effect, players got space cowboys, space pirates, and reskinned Earth societies. Starbucks was Terrabrew. Wells Fargo was Galbang. Raiders were Spacers. Radiant procedurally generated objectives replaced handcrafted questlines, making the experience feel shallow and repetitive. The universe had limitless potential, but the writing reduced it to something bland and forgettable. At the same time, Bethesda moved further away from their RPG roots. Earlier titles like Morrowind gave players massive freedom. Your decisions shaped the story and the world. With each entry released after Morrowind, Bethesda shifted to a more broader, action-orientated formula, and by Fallout 4, the player's role was already defined before the game began. Settlement building was prioritized over decision making. Rather than stat-based combat, it became more action-orientated. Bethesda moved from their roots and became more mainstream and simplified. Starfield continued this direction. Dialogue often gave the illusion of choice without consequence, with lifeless NPC interactions and redundant options that added nothing new. Persuasion felt like a shallow minigame, lockpicking was less engaging than previous entries, and there were few meaningful opportunities to roleplay. So at this point, Bethesda had lost so much of its identity. Starfield lacked so many of the elements that made their past games so special, but the competition didn't stop improving. Elden Ring introduced a handcrafted map, full of unique dungeons and landmarks surpassing Skyrim. Witcher 3 raised standards on what a side quest could be, with each having unique stories, memorable characters and choices that impacted the quest outcome. Baldurs Gate 3 took roleplaying to a whole other level, giving the player unprecedented freedom to shape the story however they'd like. Red Dead Redemption 2 improved on NPC realism, Cyberpunk improved gunplay, and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 improved on its predecessor. So whilst Bethesda abandoned their own formula and their own roots, other studios came in and not only picked up from where Bethesda left off with their older titles, but improved upon them as well. By not sticking to their proven design, Bethesda had fallen years behind the open world RPG competition. But why do this? For what reason? Well, because they wanted to compete with a different type of game, a No Man's Sky kind of game. They wanted to offer space exploration. Now, due to the limitations of the creation engine, space travel wasn't actually an option. Instead, we had loading screens. So, the player would load into their ship, load into space, then load into a planet grid. So on paper, it was supposed to be a No Man's Sky clone, but in reality, it turned into navigating a series of menus and waiting on loading screens. No Man's Sky offered all of this with no limitations. Although No Man's Sky launched to a poor reception, through determination and hard work, the game has become the ultimate space exploration game. Where Starfield stumbles, No Man's Sky thrives. Starfield locks players behind loading screens, fast travel menus, and procedurally generated grids that feel empty and lifeless. No Man's Sky, on the other hand, gives you true freedom. You can seamlessly fly from space to the surface of a planet without interruption, explore entire worlds that feel alive, and discover unique biomes, species, and resources every time you land. Even ship travel is night and day. Starfield reduces it to mini instances, whilst No Man's Sky lets you fly wherever you want, dock at massive freighters, or warp across galaxies without ever breaking immersion and without a single loading screen. So in short, everything that makes space exploration exciting, variety, freedom, and discovery exists in No Man's Sky, while Starfield feels like a stripped down imitation. So by trying to compete with No Man's Sky, with the limitations of the creation engine, Bethesda just made a weaker version. Their engine simply cannot compete with No Man's Sky. The only thing that made Starfield unique was its ship customization. Mind you, you rarely used your ship, it was more of an illusion, but the ability to customize it and walk around the interior was a special feature. My personal favourite part of Starfield. But now, No Man's Sky has released the Voyagers update, offering the same options. But not only does this new update offer way more options for customization than Starfield does, but you can actually use your ship to truly travel space, not just pretend. You can have a crew, assign roles. You can now do everything you could do in Starfield, but better. So this leaves Starfield in a very difficult position. They've just announced new DLC is on the way, but at this point, it's hard to see the point. The last DLC, which I purchased for the full price of $30 for a story that took me 4 hours. Okay, I'm not going to go on about it here. There's a video here if you want to hear me complain more, but the point is the last one reviewed bad, scoring a 4.9 on Metacritic. But the point is, what is Starfield now? At the end of the day, Starfield failed because Bethesda walked away from the very formula that made them great. Instead of handcrafted worlds full of discovery, they gave us empty procedurally generated planets. Instead of rich quests shaped by player choice, we got repetitive fetch quests. Instead of deep role-playing, we got shallow writing and lifeless dialogue. Meanwhile, their competitors pushed RPGs forward, and No Man's Sky perfected the space exploration model that Bethesda was trying to create. By abandoning their strengths to chase a game that they couldn't outdo, Bethesda ended up creating something that satisfied neither RPG fans nor space simulation fans. With the resurgence of No Man's Sky, with everything that it offers, Starfield will never catch up. At this point, it is just a space exploration game that is worse in every way compared to that title. And then on the other hand, as Bethesda spent the last decade working on the MMO Fallout 76 and Starfield, they appear to have forgotten how to make great open world RPGs. Whilst they tried something new, their competition snuck in and outshined them in every way. The reason why I call this No Man's Sky update the final nail in the coffin is because shipbuilding was the last thing Starfield truly exceeded in, the last aspect that made it unique and special. By No Man's Sky adding this and even improving upon it, it leaves Starfield with no standout features. It has decent gunplay, but not as good as Cyberpunk's. It has decent side quests, but not as good as Witcher 3's. It has some role-playing, but not as deep as Baldurs Gate 3. And now its entire space exploration setup has been well and truly outmatched, leaving Starfield as a game that is lacking in a lot and outstanding in nothing. And one of its final strong points has just been surpassed. The final nail in the coffin. At this point, the question is, what is Starfield's strength? The thing that sets it apart. There's not much left. Starfield tried to straddle the line between RPG and space sim, but by splitting its focus, Bethesda delivered a game that excelled at neither, leaving players with stronger alternatives in both genres. Bethesda got stranded in no man's land, or Sky. So, what's next for Bethesda? They've confirmed more Starfield DLC, and while fans will welcome it, I don't see the game ever catching up to its rivals. What matters now is that Bethesda learns from this, listens to the feedback and refocuses. Fallout 76 and Starfield pulled them away from their strengths, while competitors raised the bar. They are down to their last lifeline, and that's really where everything points now, the Elder Scrolls 6. This is Bethesda's chance to prove they still understand what made their games legendary. Fans don't want another half step towards being one thing or another. They want the handcrafted worlds, meaningful quests, and true role-playing freedom that defined games like Morrowind and Skyrim. The competition has caught up, and in many ways surpassed Bethesda at their own game. The Elder Scrolls 6 isn't just another release, it's a make or break moment. Either Bethesda learns from Starfield's mistakes and delivers the kind of RPG only they can make, or they risk losing the crown for good. But that's just my take, but what do you guys think? Does the No Man's Sky update spell the end for Starfield? And can Bethesda make a comeback with the Elder Scrolls 6? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. I'm Av Gaming, and thank you for watching.